There is a moment right before everything changes when the world goes very quiet. Not silent, quiet. The specific kind of quiet that happens when a building full of people has collectively decided it cannot hear what is happening one floor above them. Zuri was pressed against a corridor wall on the 16th floor of Black Crane Tower. The floor she had been told, very clearly, on her first day, did not exist for her. There was blood on the wall beside her left shoulder, not hers. She had checked. She had done that first, the way people do when they are running on something below thought, and what she confirmed was that the only thing she was entirely certain of in that moment was the man standing 3 feet in front of her. His back was to her, his voice was completely calm. She could not make out the words over the sound of her own heartbeat. She watched his right hand, the one with the silver ring, and that hand was completely still at his side. That was the thing she would remember long after she should have let herself forget everything about this building. In the most dangerous moments, he became the stillest thing in the room. He turned his head, only slightly, just enough. "Go back downstairs." 4 words, said to her, in a voice that had never, not once in the history of this building, been that quiet before tonight. She went. 4 weeks earlier, she had arrived at this building with a cleaning cart and 3 months of overdue rent pressing against her sternum like a second heartbeat. She had heard a gunshot somewhere above her head before she had even signed the employment form. She had stayed anyway. This is that story. Seoul in late February carries a cold that is not aggressive. It is patient. It settles against the skin the way a reminder settles against the mind, persistent and specific. And Zuri felt it the moment she stepped out of the taxi into the pale stone forecourt of Black Crane Tower. The building did not look like danger, that was the first thing. It looked like wealth. 42 floors of black glass and brushed steel set back from the road behind low ornamental landscaping lit with warm amber uplighting. The lobby visible through the front entrance was white marble and the particular composed quiet of a place designed to suggest that nothing difficult had ever occurred inside it. Zuri had cleaned beautiful buildings before. She had learned early that the more immaculate the surface, the more deliberate the maintenance. She pushed through the front door. A sound reached her before she had cleared the entrance. Single, contained, coming from somewhere above the lobby ceiling, muffled by concrete and engineered silence. The security guard at the front desk did not flinch. The woman at the reception console did not look up. The lobby continued its performance of normalcy without interruption. Zuri stood with her bags and her employment folder and understood, somewhere below conscious thought, that the building had just told her something she had not been invited to know. She signed the employment form anyway. 3 months of overdue rent, her mother's unfinished debt, a city that did not know her name yet. She pressed the pen to the paper and made her decision in the same quiet way she made every decision that scared her, without ceremony, without looking up. If you are watching from somewhere that has its own version of a building like this, one that the whole city moves around carefully without saying why, drop your location in the comments right now. I want to know where this story is landing tonight. Tell me where you are watching from. The building had rules. Every building has rules. These ones were delivered by a woman named Mrs. Seo, who wore her seniority in the measured precision of her pauses. Floors 8 through 14, night shift, 7 in the evening to 3 in the morning. No personal calls in the corridors. No interaction with residents beyond what the residents initiated. No entry into rooms while occupied unless directly requested. And under no circumstances, said Mrs. Seo, in the specific tone reserved for instructions intended to be absorbed as physical fact rather than suggestion, was any cleaning staff to proceed above the 14th floor. Zuri had asked evenly what was on the 15th floor. Mrs. Seo had looked at her for a moment. Nothing that is relevant to your contract. The work itself was straightforward. The floors were large, sparsely furnished in the cold and deliberate way of spaces where residents exist rather than live. The occasional silk tie left on a chair, a particular brand of mineral water on every kitchen counter, as if stocked from a standing order that no one had thought to change. The televisions that were never on. the absence in every unit of photographs. These were not the apartments of people who had forgotten to personalize their spaces. These were the apartments of people who had made a considered decision not to. Zuri cleaned them efficiently, thoroughly, and without curiosity. She had learned, in the years between what her life had been and what it currently was, that the fastest way to remain undisturbed was to disturb nothing. She cleaned. She finished. She took the service elevator to the staff room on the 3rd floor, changed out of her work clothes, and walked 40 minutes to her apartment in Dongjak-gu because the exercise helped her sleep. She did not think about the building when she was outside of it. She was very good at this. This is what she told herself on the first night, and the second, and most of the third. There is a thing that happens in buildings that are held in the grip of a single will. The people inside them begin to move differently, not dramatically, not in the way of people in fear. More precisely, they move in the way of people who have so thoroughly absorbed the limits of their environment that awareness of those limits has become involuntary. Like breathing. Black Crane Tower breathed like that. The residents moved without eye contact. They used the elevator at the times it ran according to a schedule that was not written down anywhere Zuri could find, and they used the stairs when the elevator was occupied, and none of this had been formally organized. It had simply become the way things worked inside this particular building, the way water finds the lowest point in any room. Quietly, inevitably, without announcement. She noticed it on the second night. On the third night, she understood what it meant. Someone was maintaining this building the way a person maintains a boundary, not with walls, with attention. She asked another cleaning staff member, a quiet woman named Hana who had been with the building for 2 years, who owned the tower. Hana wiped a window for a moment longer than the window required. "The management company," she said. "And who owns the management company?" The window was already clean. Hana kept wiping it. Zuri did not ask again. Jae Won existed in the building the way weather exists, not seen, present entirely in the effect he produced in everything around him. On the 4th night, Zuri was cleaning the corridor on the 12th floor when the elevator at the end of the hallway opened. 3 men stepped out, spread instinctively into a formation that was too practiced to be accidental. They moved toward the stairwell door without a word exchanged between them. The stairwell door did not require a key card. It opened before the lead man's hand reached it. Someone had opened it from the other side. The door closed. They were gone. Zuri pressed her cart flat against the wall. None of them looked at her, not because they had not noticed her, she understood that much. Because they had assessed and categorized in the half-second their eyes swept the corridor and she had been filed under irrelevant. The particular invisibility of the person holding the cleaning cloth. She was used to that. What she was not used to was the feeling that came after, when the corridor was empty again and she was still pressed against the wall with both hands on the cart handle. The feeling that something vast and careful had moved through the same space she occupied and had decided, for reasons entirely its own, to leave her undisturbed. It was not reassuring. It was something more complicated than reassuring. It made her want to understand the shape of it. He was on the 21st floor when she was pressing herself against the 12th floor wall. He was reviewing a document outlining 3 financial moves that would, if executed in the right sequence, remove a significant portion of Chairman Wu's leverage over the organization's Eastern Territory accounts. He was not thinking about the woman who had just arrived with a cleaning cart and an employment form. He had not heard her yet. That would happen in 3 days. The parking garage on sublevel 2 ran the full footprint of the building. 240 meters of concrete and low fluorescent light and the smell of motor oil and recirculated air. It was a space that no one without a specific reason to be there ever found themselves in. In-ho was there for a very specific reason. He spoke for 40 seconds. Then he listened. "Already," he said. The smile settled. The particular quality of something that has been waiting a long time and has just received confirmation that the waiting is over. "Good," he said. "I will handle the timing from this side." He ended the call. He straightened the collar of his blazer in the reflection of the elevator door before it opened. He rode up alone. When he stepped out onto the 14th floor, his expression had returned to the warm and approachable face he wore as a professional habit. He nodded politely to a cleaning staff member in the corridor. She nodded back. The audience now knows something that neither Zuri nor Jae Won does. Her arrival was not random. Her application, processed in 24 hours by an employment agency that does not rush anything for anyone, was processed that fast because someone made a call. The same someone who just confirmed in a parking garage that she is already inside the building. Zuri is cleaning the 11th floor. She is thinking about whether she remembered to transfer her rent installment before her shift. She is humming, very quietly, half under her breath, the beginning of a melody she immediately stops. She does not hum at work. She made that rule for herself. Not yet. This is the moment. Everything you just watched was a setup. In-ho just confirmed that Zuri did not end up in this building by chance, and Jae Won has no idea. If you were Jae Won right now, knowing nothing of what was said in that parking garage, would you want to know the truth, or would you rather feel what you are about to feel first, before reality catches up? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you would choose. The stairwell on the 15th floor was not technically accessible. The keycard terminal required a residential clearance code that Zuri's employment card did not carry. But on her 4th night, working late to cover a colleague who had called in sick, she had taken the service stairs to retrieve a supply from the stockroom on 13. On her way back, the door to the 14th floor landing had swung open to let out another staff member, and it had stayed open for exactly long enough. She had looked at the stairs going up. She had looked at them for a moment. She was in the stairwell on the 15th floor 6 minutes later. It was empty. The landing was clean concrete with a single emergency light and a closed fire door. There was a narrow window in the external wall with an unobstructed view of Seoul spread out below in its full illuminated excess, like something that had been running for so long it had forgotten how to stop. She stood at the window for a while. She pressed her forehead against the glass and breathed. Then she sang. Her mother had called it an Akan cradle song, though it was not precisely that. It was older and less structured than a song with a name. It was the kind of melody that exists in a family the way certain gestures exist, passed from one set of hands to another across generations without any deliberate decision to preserve it. Her mother had sung it at the kitchen table in Accra while braiding Zuri's hair, soft and low, never performing it, only being in it. Zuri sang it the same way now, not for anyone, not for release, not even for herself in any way she could have articulated. She sang it the way you breathe in a room by yourself, because the body requires it, because something had been held for too long and needed somewhere to go that was not forward. The sound carried through the concrete wall to Jae Won's left. He stopped speaking mid-sentence. The men across the table looked at each other. Kang, standing to Jae Won's right against the wall, did not move a single muscle. He watched Jae Won the way you watch someone who has just noticed something in their peripheral vision that has changed the entire context of the room. Jae Won's right hand was flat on the table. The silver ring was still. He listened to the entire song without blinking. It lasted 4 minutes and 7 seconds. When the song ended, he looked at Kang. 4 words. Find out who sings. Then he looked back at the 3 men across the table. You can go home. The 3 men who had walked into that meeting uncertain whether they would be going home at all looked at each other one more time. They gathered their things and they went home, and not a single one of them fully processed which miracle had happened first. Kang ran the name within 20 minutes. Zuri. Contract cleaning staff, floors 8 through 14. Hired 3 days prior. Agency placed. All documentation clean. No known connections to any competing organization or interested party. He brought it back to Jae Won, who was standing at his window with his back to the room. Jae Won read the single sheet. He set it down. What shift is she on tonight? She finished at 3. She would have left already. Jae Won rotated the silver ring once. She is not to be approached. She is not to be spoken to beyond the normal operational requirements of her contract. No one on this floor is to interact with her in any way that makes her uncomfortable in this building. Kang waited. And nobody touches her. Nobody. Not for any reason. The instruction carried a weight Kang recognized. He had received orders from Jae Won for 10 years. He understood the register of every instruction he had ever been given. This one lived in a category that had never existed before tonight. Understood. That is all. In-ho received the order through Kong at 7 the following morning. He absorbed it without visible reaction. He asked one clarifying question. Has he identified a specific threat? No specific threat, Kang said. General directive. In-ho nodded. He typed something on his phone. He put the phone away. If Kang noticed the speed of that typing, he did not comment on it. Zuri arrived for her shift at 7 that evening as always. She scanned her card. She took her cart. She rode the service elevator to the 8th floor and began her rounds. Nothing was visibly different. The corridors were the same. The units were the same. The building performed its usual composed silence around her. She could not explain why it felt different. Not threatening. Not unwelcoming. Something she had no precise word for, like the change in the quality of light in a room when someone opens a window in another part of the building. You cannot see the change. You feel it in the air. She touched the gold bracelet on her wrist and kept working. In the 3 days that followed, 3 things happened that Zuri had no reason to connect to each other. First, the roster assignment was quietly adjusted so that her primary floors shifted from 8 through 12 to 11 through 14, closer to 15. No explanation provided. Mrs. SEO mentioned something about balancing staff coverage as if she were reading from a thought formed minutes prior. Second, the supply room on the 14th floor was stocked differently. The particular brand of cleaning solution Zuri preferred, which she had mentioned once in passing to Hana and no one else, appeared on the shelves without announcement. Third, on the 3rd evening, the service elevator on the 14th floor developed a fault that the maintenance system logged as a minor technical issue requiring investigation. The fault meant the standard service elevator was unavailable, and the alternate route, per building protocol, took staff through the corridor adjacent to the executive floor, rather than the back service passage. Zuri took the alternate route. She was halfway down the corridor when the executive lounge door opened. She did not stop. She kept her pace consistent. She kept her eyes forward, and from the precise corner of her peripheral vision she registered him. Dark suit, top button undone, looking down at something in his hand. And at the exact moment his gaze lifted, a pause followed. Not long, under 2 seconds, but long enough. She did not look at him. Not because she had not noticed him. She had. She would have noticed a person standing exactly like that in any room she entered, because the quality of stillness he carried was specific enough to register at a physical level. She did not look at him, because looking would have required her to decide what her face did next, and she was not prepared for that decision in a building where her instructions were extremely clear. She kept walking. She turned the corner. She stood in the corridor for a moment with her back against the wall and her hands on the cart handle. Nothing internal and precisely framed, just a kind of alertness she had not felt in a very long time. Quiet and very awake. Jae Won did not look after her. He went back to the lounge and stood at the window for 4 minutes without opening the papers he was holding, which had been the reason he had left the office in the first place. He had recognized something. Not her face. He had recognized a quality in the way she moved, that specific physical economy of a person who has disciplined their body to take up as little space as possible. He knew that quality. He had seen it in his mother, in himself, once before a different kind of discipline replaced it. He put the papers in his jacket pocket and went back to work. Something had been added to the room and would not be removed by the simple act of leaving it. The thing about people who are very good at wanting nothing is that they do not know how to recognize a want when it begins. Jae Won had spent 10 years building a life in which every desire was strategic and every strategic desire was achievable. He did not lean toward things he could not calculate. He did not allow proximity to things that would cost him clarity. He stood in a doorway watching an empty corridor and thought about the supply room on the 14th floor. He had ordered it himself. The words, when they finally arrived, were not romantic. They were not even particularly notable on their surface. It was the 9th night of her employment. The service elevator fault had been resolved and then, very quietly, had recurred. Zuri had taken the alternate route again. This time, the executive lounge door was already open. She stopped. Because he was standing in the opening and not moving. She met his eyes. He did not smile. He did not use the particular performance of approachability that most people deployed when they were about to say something they wanted to land well. He simply looked at her with the same precision she had felt in that corridor on their first crossing and said, "You are on the wrong floor." "The elevator is out," she said. He looked at her for one more moment. "It was stocked," he said then. "The supply room on 14, with the correct product." She did not know what to do with that sentence. She filed it carefully. "Thank you," she said. He gave a single nod. He stepped back. The doorway was clear. She pushed her cart forward. She moved past him. She maintained exactly the same pace she had held for every meter of this building on every previous shift. She did not look back. Jae Won stood in the doorway and watched her go. Not because he had made a decision to do so, because his feet had not moved. Kang appeared in the interior of the lounge behind him. Jae Won did not turn around. "Has the supply room been restocked on 13 as well?" "It was done this afternoon," Kang said. "Good." A pause. "The elevator issue. When is it being repaired?" Kang said nothing for a moment. Then, "Maintenance says next week." Jae Won looked at the empty corridor where she had been. Let them take their time. The thing about the supply room was this. Jae Won had ordered it with the precision he brought to everything operational. He had specified the product from the information Kang retrieved. He had not questioned the instinct that produced the instruction. He had not examined the feeling behind the order. He had given the order the same way he gave orders about territorial accounts and security protocols, because it was the correct next move given the available information. He would understand much later that this was how it had always started for him, not with want, with precision applied to want, wearing the costume of necessity. He had been building toward her in the language he knew. One small exact thing at a time. The 2 weeks that followed were a study in restraint. Not his alone, hers too, though she did not name it that way to herself. She named it professionalism. She named it common sense. She named it the entirely reasonable conclusion of a woman who has enough to manage without manufacturing additional complications inside the building where she earns her rent money. They passed in corridors. They existed on the same floor at overlapping hours more frequently than the roster technically explained. Neither of them spoke about this. She noticed, around the 12th day, that the specific corridor near the executive lounge was always lit when she took the alternate route, even when the other corridors ran on the motion sensor low-power setting. Someone had manually overridden the sensor for that stretch of corridor. She touched her gold bracelet. She continued working. He noticed, around the 14th day, that she had started arriving 4 minutes earlier than her contracted start time, not rushing. Just earlier, he had started being at his window during those 4 minutes, not for any reason he had elected to examine. They spoke 4 more times in those 2 weeks, sentences, not conversations. The kind of exchanges that are brief, not because neither person has more to say, but because saying more requires a decision that neither of them is prepared to make in a building full of people whose jobs depend on their ability to see and process everything that happens within it. He told her the elevator on 14 was being looked at. She told him she had found the replacement cleaning materials and that whoever had ordered them had selected the correct specifications. He said nothing to this for a moment. Then, "Good." She left. He stood in his office for 11 minutes without doing anything else. On the 16th day, she sang in the stairwell again. He heard it. He did not move. And somewhere below them both, In-ho was on his second call with Chairman Woo's office in 3 days. In-ho was not reckless. That was the thing that made him dangerous, in a way entirely different from Kang's danger. Kang was dangerous because he would do anything. In-ho was dangerous because he would wait for exactly the right thing. He had been watching for 3 weeks. He had corridor footage showing the elevator fault pattern and its correlation to the timing of her alternate route. He had the supply room order logs with their unusual specificity. He had 4 instances of their corridor proximity documented to the second. None of it was enough. Chairman Woo did not operate on circumstantial patterns. She operated on mechanisms, on things that, once presented, could not be reasonably interpreted in any other way. He needed something more. He got it on the 17th day, the power cut, unplanned, a fault in the sub-level electrical distribution panel that the building engineer would later describe as a minor cascade failure in the backup switching system. 17 minutes of partial power outage affecting the 14th and 15th floors. In-ho had not arranged the power cut, but he had been the one, 6 days prior, who had quietly requested that the maintenance report on the backup switching system be deprioritized for the week. A backlog management decision. Entirely administrative. The power cut happened naturally. In-ho simply had not moved to prevent it. He watched the corridor timestamp on his screen when the lights went out on 14. He noted who was on that floor. He noted who was in the executive lounge when the elevator lockdown protocol automatically engaged. He sat back. He picked up his phone. This, he thought, was the mechanism. If you are watching what In-ho just did, and you are feeling exactly what I think you are feeling, you are right to feel it. Drop your reaction in the comments right now. Tell me what you want to happen to him, because we are not done with In-ho, not even close. The lights went out at 10:47 p.m. They did not flicker. Buildings like Black Crane Tower do not flicker. The power simply stopped, the emergency system engaged at floor level, and the corridor became a different place entirely. Red tinged at the baseboards, deep shadow above, the kind of lighting that removes the professional surface from everything and leaves the human underneath. Zuri was in the corridor outside the executive lounge with her cart when the power died. The elevator lockdown protocol engaged with a soft mechanical thud she felt more than heard. She stood in the dark corridor and did not panic. She had grown up in a city that understood power cuts as a basic feature of existence. She had learned, young, that darkness was not the threat. What you did inside the darkness was the question. She reached for the cart's side rail and oriented herself by touch. The executive lounge door opened. "Are you all right?" His voice in the dark was different. Stripped of the building's ambient performance, it had a quality she had not heard from him in a corridor before. Direct, actually asking. "I am fine," she said. A pause. "The elevator lockdown will release in approximately 20 minutes when the backup system cycles. You cannot leave the floor until it does." She processed this. "There is nowhere else I need to be," she said. Another pause. Brief. "Come inside." The lounge faced east. The city was an illuminated field through the full-length windows, Seoul in its entirety doing its ordinary, extraordinary thing 200 meters below. She stood inside the doorway and looked at it for a moment before she could help herself. Then she looked at him. He was standing at the window with his hands in his jacket pockets, the city light defining his profile. He looked, in this light, in this room without the building's operating context, like a person rather than a function. It was the first time inside this building she had looked at him without the professional architecture between them. He looked back at her. The city made a sound that was not quite silence and not quite music. Neither of them moved for a moment. Then he said, "Sit if you want to." She sat. The conversation that happened in the next 17 minutes was, on its surface, not about anything important. He asked her where she was from. She told him. He said the name of Accra the way someone says the name of a city they have looked at on a map without ever finding a reason to go. She asked how long he had been in this building. A long time, he said. She looked at the city outside the window. It is beautiful from up here, she said. Yes, he said. And then, after a pause that held something more than the answer to what she had just said, it is. She felt the gold bracelet on her wrist. She looked at the window. She did not look at him. She understood, in the specific and uncomplicated way that some things simply arrive without announcement, that she was in the most dangerous room she had ever sat in, not because of what was in it, because of what she felt in it. The elevator lockdown released with a soft chime at 11:08 p.m. She stood. "Good night," she said. He said it back. Only her name at the end. "Good night, Zuri." The first time. The way her name sounded in his voice would be with her for a long time. She knew it before she reached the elevator. The night of the power cut changed something between them that neither of them moved to address. Jae Won began leaving his office door ajar during the hours of her shift. Not wide, not as an invitation, just the specific degree of open that meant the corridor light crossed the threshold. Zuri began taking slightly longer with the 14th floor than the roster technically required. They spoke about other things entirely. Logistics, the building. Once, a question she asked about what the view looked like from this height in the first snow. He told her about the way Seoul looked when it snowed, when everything was briefly the same color and the city went briefly quiet, as if the snow had asked it to. She listened the way she had listened to her professors at the conservatory in Accra when they spoke about a piece of music, fully, with the specific attention of someone who intends to keep what they are being given. The smile happened on the 20th night. Not a performed smile, not the professional warmth she applied to interactions in this building like a coat she put on with her uniform. This was the other kind, the one that arrives without warning because something catches you off guard in exactly the right way and your face moves before you can decide what it is going to do. He had said something about the snow, something small and precise and unexpectedly funny about a particular intersection in Gangnam becoming impossible in bad weather. She laughed. He watched her laugh. She watched him watch her laugh, and the specific quality of the way he was watching made her stop. Not because it was strange, because it was not. Because it was the exact face of someone encountering something they had been waiting a very long time to see without knowing they were waiting for it. That was the moment it became something they could no longer label professionally. Neither said this out loud. But the building knew. The way buildings know everything that happens inside them. And below them both, In-ho had just sent his third message to Chairman Woo's assistant, attaching for the first time documentation. The photograph was old, printed on thick photo paper of the type that was standard in the early 1990s. The corners had gone soft with age, and the colors had shifted slightly warm, the way photographs do when time removes them from the moment they were taken and turns them into evidence instead. A young woman stood outside a government building. She was holding a manila folder of documents against her chest and looking at the camera with the expression of someone who is afraid and is performing not being afraid badly. The kind of expression that is only visible in retrospect when you know what the person was about to do and can read the knowledge of what it would cost them in the tightness around their eyes. Chairman Woo looked at the photograph for a very long time. "Where?" she said in a voice reduced to its purest components. "Did you find this?" In-ho stood on the other side of the desk. "The woman in this photograph," he said, "made a formal testimony attempt against your early organization. The testimony was buried through a third party. Her name was Afia. She died in Accra, Ghana 14 months ago." Silence. "Her daughter," In-ho said, "is currently employed as contract cleaning staff on floors 11 through 14 of Black Crane Tower. Her name is Zuri." Chairman Woo did not move. She was placed by an employment agency that has on 3 previous occasions been used to route operatives into close proximity with target environments. I have not confirmed who arranged the placement. What I can confirm is that the approval timeline for her contract was 24 hours, which is not standard. Chairman Wu picked up the photograph again. Every scene the audience had watched before this moment now carried a different weight. Every soft corridor exchange, every supply room consideration, every night Jae Won stood at his window during her 4 early minutes. The whole architecture of it was revealed now as something larger than either of them had consented to enter. The story had doubled in size, and Zuri, on the 14th floor with her cart and her gold bracelet and her mother's song, did not know a single word of any of it. On the 22nd day, Jae Won called In-ho to his office. He had noticed the pattern 3 days before, surveillance log timestamps that did not align with In-ho's stated movements. A message thread on the organizational secure system with access markers pointing to In-ho's clearance level, making external contact at irregular hours. In-ho confessed smoothly. He confessed to the corridor footage documentation. He confessed to the proximity analysis. He framed it with the particular skill of someone who has rehearsed contrition until it becomes indistinguishable from the genuine thing as protective surveillance. He had been watching for operational threats. He had not found one. He had been overcautious. He accepted Jae Won's assessment of the breach. He said nothing about the photograph. He said nothing about Afia, nothing about the employment agency, nothing about Zuri's mother or the testimony from 30 years ago that Chairman Wu had buried. He confessed enough to close the door. He kept the rest of it behind the door after it closed. Jae Won instructed Kang to increase monitoring on all outgoing communications from In-ho's devices. He told Zuri nothing. He stood at his window that evening and understood that the building had a current running through it he had not yet fully mapped. He could feel it the way you feel a change in pressure before rain. Something was coming. He could not see the shape of it yet. He looked at the clock. Her shift would begin in 40 minutes. He straightened his jacket. He went back to work. The audience breathed out. The threat appeared contained. It was not contained. She arrived without announcement. That was the first signal. Chairman Wu did not arrive at places without announcing herself. She announced herself because she wanted the psychological landscape of a room arranged before she entered it. The fact that she walked unannounced through the lobby of Black Crane Tower at 9:40 p.m. on a Tuesday meant that the announcement was not the point. The entrance was. Kang called Jae Won from the lobby before she cleared the reception desk. Jae Won was in his office alone when she came in. He did not stand, not out of disrespect, out of the specific equilibrium he maintained with her, the equilibrium that kept power balanced between them rather than placed fully in either direction. She sat. She set her bag down. She folded her hands on the table. "You have developed a sentimentality," she said. "I am not saying this as a criticism. I am saying it as a weather report." Jae Won said nothing. "The woman on the 14th floor," Chairman Wu said. "Her placement was not accidental. Someone put her inside this building as a mechanism against me. I know who arranged it, and I know who her mother was." The room did not change. Jae Won did not move. "What I am telling you is not designed to hurt you," Chairman Wu said. "If she remains in this building after 48 hours, I will be required to treat her as I treat any operational threat. That is not a threat. It is a protocol." She stood. She picked up her bag. "You have until Thursday morning. Do what you have always done well. Make the correct decision." She left. Jae Won sat for 6 minutes after Chairman Wu left. He ran through each option the way he ran through every operational problem. Not with emotion, with architecture. The first option was to send Zuri away. Arrange anonymous financial support. Terminate the contract with explanation enough to satisfy her and insufficient to endanger her. She walks out of Black Crane Tower before Thursday morning and into a world without the protection she does not know has been surrounding her. She does not know why. He cannot tell her. The people who originally placed her here still have access to her trajectory. She is safer in the abstract and exposed in every specific direction he cannot monitor. The second option was to defy Chairman Wu, keep Zuri, accept open conflict. Every resource of the organization would be turned toward resolving that conflict, and Zuri would be at the center of it, not because she is a combatant, but because Chairman Wu would make her one. The third option he turned over the longest. Tell Zuri the truth, the full truth. Her mother's testimony, the buried documents, the arranged placement, the photograph on Chairman Wu's desk, the 48 hours. This option would require her to absorb in a single conversation the information that her entire time in this building had been arranged by forces she did not consent to. That the city she came to for escape had been watching her from the first moment. That the man who had stalked her supply room and said her name the way it was supposed to be said had known, for at least 3 days, that something larger was threading through the space they had made between them. It was the most dangerous option. He called Kang. Find out where she is on the floor right now. 14. She has 30 minutes left on her shift. Tell her I need to speak with her when she is finished. Kang paused. Only by one beat. Understood, he said. Now, before we go any further, right now, standing at this exact point in the story, what do you think Jae Won is going to do? Does he send her away to protect her from a distance, knowing she will never understand why? Or does he tell her everything and trust her with the full weight of it? Tell me your prediction in the comments right now. I want to see how many of you already know this man. She came in at 3:04 a.m., still in her work clothes, the gold bracelet on her left wrist. She stood in the doorway with the question already on her face because she was not a person who could successfully keep a question off her face when it mattered. He did not offer her the chair. He stood instead. He came around the desk and stopped 6 feet from where she was standing and looked at her with the expression she had learned to identify over 22 days as the one that meant he was about to say exactly what he intended to say without any architecture around it. There are things I need to tell you, he said, about why you are in this building, about your mother, about what is going to happen in the next 48 hours if you remain here. She did not move. I did not arrange your placement, he said, but I have known for 3 days that it was not accidental. I should have told you the moment I knew. I did not. I am telling you now. The gold bracelet was very still. Your mother made a testimony attempt 30 years ago, he said, against the organization this building belongs to. It was suppressed. She paid for it in ways she may not have told you everything about. The person who suppressed it is the person who walked into this office tonight and gave me 48 hours to make a decision about you. Zuri looked at him. What decision? She said. Whether to ask you to leave. Silence. And what did you decide? She said. I decided, he said, that you deserve to know what you walked into, and that you deserve to be the one who decides what happens next. Not me. Not Chairman Wu. You. She looked at him for a long time. Then she did something that surprised both of them. She sat down. In the chair she had not been offered, and she said, Tell me everything, tell me. He told her everything, the photograph, her mother's name spoken in his office out loud for the first time, the testimony, the employment agency timeline, the 48-hour window, Chairman Wu. He told her all of it and then he stopped and the room was quiet. Zuri sat with the information for a long time. Then she said, I know about my mother's testimony. He was very still. She told me, Zuri said, in the last weeks, not everything. She told me there was a woman in Seoul who owed our family a debt that could not be repaid in money. She told me there was a contact inside a powerful organization who had been watching over us from a distance for 30 years, someone who had carried guilt without enough courage to correct it. She said, if you ever need to disappear and start again, that contact will find a way to open a door. She looked up at him. She did not tell me the name of the organization. She told me, go to Seoul, let them find you, collect what is owed, come home. She sent you here on purpose, he said. Yes. And the grief was real. The grief was entirely real, she said. They are not contradictory. She was my mother. She was also a woman who had been running on an unfinished thing for 30 years, and she passed that unfinished thing to the only person she trusted with it. The room was quiet. What were you supposed to collect? He said. Zuri looked at the window. At Seoul. At the city her mother had known from 30 years away and sent her daughter toward like a letter posted to an address you are not certain still exists. I did not know when I arrived, she said. I think I am starting to understand. She looked at him. The distance between them, measured in weeks and walls and everything they had both held back across 22 nights of alternating routes and lit corridors and stolen silences, folded. Not closed, folded, into something that both of them would have to decide what to do with, together, in the time that remained before Thursday morning. If this story has reached somewhere in you that you were not expecting it to reach, share it right now. Send it to the person who watches these stories with you, the one you are thinking about while this is playing. You know who that is. Send it to them now. The 48 hours passed. Chairman Wu received a communication from Jae Won that outlined in 6 precise paragraphs the financial leverage sequence he had been building for 18 months. The sequence was complete. The Eastern Territory accounts were effectively beyond her reach. The communication ended with a sentence that, in the language of their organizational relationship, meant your 48 hours have expired and the outcome was not the one you designed. Chairman Wu read it twice. She picked up the photograph of Mafia from her desk. She held it for a moment. She put it in the drawer. Zuri did not leave the building on Thursday morning. She arrived for her shift. She scanned her card. She collected her cart. She took the service elevator to the 14th floor. The door to the executive lounge was ajar when she reached the corridor. She stopped. She looked at it. She kept walking. When she passed it, she slowed, just enough, and from inside the lounge she heard no sound, only the ambient hum of the building, the particular quality of quiet that meant someone was in a room, not working, just present. She touched the gold bracelet. She kept walking. He heard her footsteps slow and then continue. He closed his eyes for 1 second. Then he smiled, quietly. The particular kind of smile that does not know what to do with itself yet. The kind that arrives before the rest of the story has been written. And then the phone in In-ho's pocket vibrated. A message from a number stored under no name. One line, the photograph has been received. We are ready to move. In-ho read it once. He deleted it. He looked at the corridor ahead of him. He looked at the executive lounge door. He put his phone away. He walked toward the elevator. The story was not over. It had simply found the shape of its next chapter. If you need to know what In-ho just set in motion and who was on the other end of that message and what Chairman Wu's real history with Mafia is about to cost everyone in this building, subscribe right now and turn your notifications on. Part 2 is already written. The photograph has been sent to someone who has been waiting 30 years for exactly this, and they have just made direct contact with Zuri. Jae Won does not know yet. What comes next will change everything that just happened in this story. Every warmth, every wall, every order given in that corridor 4 weeks ago. All of it is about to carry a meaning neither of them anticipated. Part 2. Coming soon. Do not go anywhere. If this story pulled you in, you already know this is where you belong. More stories like this drop here every single day. Don't miss the next one.